Okay, my name is Joseph Tavares. I'm a board member for the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence. I'm also a retired police chief with over 35 years of law enforcement experience. Today I'd like to testify on behalf of House Bill 7243, the No Guns in School bill, along with House Bill 7199, relative to high capacity. I'll begin with 7243. Concealed carry permits are issued to law-abiding citizens who show cause for self-protection for their businesses, but they are not police officers. They are not peace officers. They are not qualified or trained to carry firearms in schools. Peace officers, as I mentioned, they're law-abiding, their heart's in the right place, but they don't have the training that's required to be given the authority to carry a firearm in school. The more guns you have in school, the more likely there's going to be an accidental discharge, an escalation of a situation that could have been handled without a firearm. It's just not a good thing. The concealed carry permit individuals are not trained in judgment shooting, the shoot, don't shoot scenarios. More often than not, what comes into play is when to shoot and when not to shoot. What's the background? What's the accuracy? These situations also deal with high-stress situations. Concealed carry permits, although there's some very qualified, but the requirements do not require them to have those type of stressful shootings scenarios. And also remember one thing, police officers day in and day out, they're conditioned to handle those high-stress situations. So even though not every call is a gun call, every call you have a gun because you bring your own. But it also is the day-to-day training as to how to handle a situation. And very few involve firearms. Also, in addition to what I've made mention, they're not trained as concealed carry permit individuals with low light conditions or moving targets. As it's been mentioned before, they're trained to shoot at paper targets in a very controlled situation. It's totally different when there's a lot of activities going on. As I've testified in the past, last year, I think we do them a favor by not having them carry a firearm and giving that false hope they're going to be the hero of the day. As it's been mentioned, the likelihood that during that mass shooting that individual is going to be in the building is very small. What is more likely is that individual who has that permit that is in that school is potentially going to be involved or has a chance of an accidental shooting. Another type of training police officers go through that you don't see with CPPs is handgun retention. Once again, very, very important when you have a firearm that you're able to retain it. Because when you're not able to, and you haven't been trained, and you're not carrying the right holster, what ends up happening, the argument that becomes a struggle then becomes a gun in someone else's hand. You're overpowered. These are good people. They're sometimes not going to be as strong and as fit as some of the people they may come across. So now they've entered a gun into an argument, into a dispute, with a live firearm now in the wrong hands. That's what puts children in harm's way. I can go on and talk about, what is obvious to me as a police officer. This is not that I don't respect some of those individuals from having their permits. Of course, they've been issued. They've shown to be good citizens, but not to be peace officers. They are there for self-protection. They're carrying that firearm to protect the money that their business requires them to carry, those type of things. It's a whole different responsibility to be a peace officer and to act in the way that takes years of training, not only in firearm training, but in de-escalation, judgment shootings. It's a lot more to being a police officer. And anyone who's not a police officer should not be in possession of a firearm in a school building. Again, we've also seen over the years mistaken identity when a first responder does have to go to a school. The idea that some citizen is going to have a firearm in their hand spells tragedy. It breeds confusion. There are other ways that we make our children safe. Those are called, and they have been done, and it's target hardening the schools. It's putting locks on the doors, cameras, limiting entry. Those are things, and realistic things, that school officials are better suited to handle and better trained to handle. Once again, the more guns you have in school, the more likely there are for those type of issues. I'm not going to continue to repeat what you've heard, so I'll end with there as far as that particular.
Chief, are you aware of any situation in Rhode Island where there has been an accident in a school where someone was carrying on the campus as a concealed carry?
I specifically haven't handled an investigation as you described, but I can tell you there are accidental discharges that occur every day in this country, every single day. And the idea that the push has been for more and more concealed carry permits that are being pushed, some legislation, it's just a matter of time. I sit here because I feel it's important to share my expertise. I've seen a number of accidental discharge, maybe not in the schools because we've been pretty good in keeping guns out of schools. But with more guns in schools, more people getting those permits, I think it's wise at this point to set the stage clearly. We don't need those firearms in schools. If people need them for their self-protection, that's one thing. But in all the permits I issued, there hasn't been one case where someone on their application made mention that they need it for school issues. It's all about their business. So if they've shown no need, why have it? It's an accident waiting to happen. So often we react. This is more or less letting the legislators know, let's be proactive and let's prevent that tragedy from occurring, because none of these people who feel they have the need and the expertise to handle a situation mean anyone any harm, but it'll result in tragedy. And you've heard it here from me today. I ask you to really consider what I've made mention, and that is trained people, and only trained people, should be in the schools with firearms, not concealed carry permit individuals. Some are enthusiasts that have very accurate aim under certain conditions. Some may have some military, and I commend them for their military service. But what we're talking about is those individuals who have been trained to handle these type of current first responders that they have to deal with. It's tough enough for the police officers to get it right, let alone to be distracted with yet another individual with a gun in the school. The whole idea is to leave it to the trained professional. You know, I may be CAP certified, but I'm not a cardiologist, okay? And you don't want me operating on your heart. There's a distinction. You know, CPP versus a professionally trained police officer are two different things.
So if a madman were to come through those doors,
Yes.
intent on killing us all,
Yes.
you would rather wait for the police than have one of these gentlemen in the back confront him?
No, and that's not what I said.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm saying, in the perfect scenario, and I'm not saying there doesn't exist a scenario where someone could benefit, but more likely that individual, and we only have a limited amount of concealed carry permit people in this state, to think that during that time, we haven't had a mass shooting in our schools either. So we don't want that to happen. But the idea, because it was testified earlier, that the likelihood of that happening, we shouldn't be in panic that we're going to have all these people waiting for the bad guy to come in and be a hero. I realize.
But hang on, this is already the law.
Right.
It's already the law in the state of Rhode Island that you can conceal
I
carry,
understand
and it
that.
has been for some time.
Exactly.
Okay.
But what I'm
I
telling
mean,
you.
the bill isn't to make that the
Right,
law.
I
That's already the
understand,
law.
yes.
Okay.
What I'm telling you is, although there can be a scenario where someone with a firearm could help, more likely, it's going to hurt. It's going to be that accidental discharge. It's going to be that untrained individual under stress who's very good shot under a calm and controlled situation. But when that heat comes on in that movement and they have to run up a flight of stairs, or there's children and that shot's taking place, the ricochet, unlike a range where they take provisions relative to reducing ricochets. And the schools aren't built like a range. You're going to have unintended consequences. And as a trained professional, I caution you that the thing to do in this case is to limit the guns we put into our schools.
Okay. I respect your position.
Okay.
Any further questions for the chief? Thank you.
The second item will be on large capacity firearms. Once again, there's no magic number that says what's right and what's wrong, but we've come to the conclusion that what seems to be a fair number is 10. Anyone who's has a firearm and is having a firearm to protect themselves has that ability with 10 rounds. As a police officer, and I'm sure some of the people who are against this have never been police officers and don't know what it is to be a police officer walking up to a vehicle or with his sidearm carrying 12, and the bad guy may have 15, 30, or as someone said, 100. It allows us to have more rounds in our firearms than the bad guy. If two people have to reload, I want that to be the suspect and not the police officer, as it's been mentioned before. So that's one good reason why 10 is reasonable. It allows you to protect yourself. It allows you to have your firearm loaded for self-protection. However, our police officers aren't outgunned. And some people may say, well, this is law-abiding people. Why should they suffer? Well, guess what? Where do the bad guys get their guns? House breaks. Every day that junkie is breaking into a house to get their fix. So that gun finds itself on the street. If you don't limit those magazines for the law-abiding individuals without denying them self-protection, they have their right to protection, we're going to see less of those high-capacity firearms out there. And we've all seen with the school shootings and other instances, there is an opportunity during that reload to either escape or overtake that gunman. And some have made mention, some people are very proficient. They could reload quickly. Some are. But once again, even the bad guy, during the heat of a gunfight, is not going to be as proficient in reloading. So that 2 seconds that he may be able to do in his bedroom in practice may be 7, 8, 10 seconds at the school. Once again, I talk from 35 years of police experience. I've seen it. I'm sure some of the critics have no clue because they only know what they know. I've seen it, been there, done it. Thank you for your time.
I just want to make sure I understand this. So you're in favor of the unarmed citizen trying to tackle the gunman while he reloads, but not in favor of the armed citizen confronting the gunman?
No, that's your words and not mine.
Okay.
What I've made mention, and we're talking about no guns in schools. The reason I'm against CPs in schools with firearms, the likelihood that that gun will be used in a situation that wasn't intended is greater than the likelihood that he's going to have that firearm on his person and save the day from a mass shooter. The accidental discharges are more frequent than the mass shootings. Those escalation, the handgun retention, all of those items that I've mentioned, there are a number of incidents that occur in the schools in Rhode Island every day. Those incidents are a lot less than shootings. They're arguments. They're the fist fights. The idea of bringing more guns into the schools and having teachers trying to break up a fight while armed without a handgun holster that is going to allow that gun to be retained by the teacher is an accident waiting to happen.
Okay, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Representative Filippi, do you have a question?
I do. It's more of a statement. I'm just trying to reconcile the position on the two bills. You know, I think you said there's so few mass shootings that we don't need to have anyone armed in school
Well,
whatsoever.
we have enough. One is too many.
But
But what I'm saying is, and if I could just,
If I
before
could just finish.
my words are changed, what I'm saying is we have way too many mass shootings, but the number we have don't exceed we talked about how many people have permits. We haven't had one in Rhode Island. So the likelihood of having people with guns in school are so important to Rhode Islanders. I argue that it's more dangerous than it is beneficial.
But the risk of the mass shooting is still there, that we need to limit the magazine sizes. It's almost like an inherent contradiction in your
Okay,
position
let
on
me
the two
explain
bills.
that. Once again, a mass shooting can occur any day. Hopefully we don't have one in Rhode Island or anywhere else in this country.
And that's why we should limit magazine sizes.
That's why we should, and when it comes to schools, is target harden the schools. We've done a lot better job over the years as far as putting buzzers on doors so that people just don't walk in. We have other policies in place where if there's domestic issues and a teacher is fearing her spouse coming in, we have those type of things. You alert the police. There are a number of things we can do to make our schools safer without seeing the solution as arming everyone.
I understand.
Okay, so that's relative to the importance of the less guns in school, the better.
But the risk of mass shootings is such that we still need to limit magazine sizes.
Well,
Even though it's not a risk enough for us to have other people armed in school, it is a risk enough for us to limit magazine sizes.
Well, for a few reasons. As I made mention, every police officer that goes up to a suspect vehicle has his firearm with a limited amount of rounds. Doesn't it make sense that we give that officer the edge when he's carrying 12 or 14 versus the bad guy being able to have 15 or 30? And I know the bad guy will get whatever he wants and bring it to the scene when he's committed a crime. But since he steals and gets those guns and magazines from law-abiding homes every day in house breaks, if we limit the capacities that are in your collection and out there, there's less chance that officer is going to have to face those high capacity when he makes that car stop. Maybe I haven't explained it as well as I have it in
think
my
you've
head.
explained it. I
But
just see
think
there's this
you can
contradiction between the
see
two
that-
positions,
you know,
and I don't know if
think
it's
so, because
reconcilable.
Those high capacity magazines go far beyond just the school setting. Every police stop, I want that police officer to have more rounds than the suspect.